The wind moved slowly across the silent battlefield, carrying the smell of burnt metal and smoke. Broken machines lay scattered under a pale blue sky, and the ground shimmered faintly with alien dust. In the middle of the ruins, a group of tall armored aliens dragged a man across the sand. His name was Ethan, a human engineer, not a soldier, not a fighter. His uniform was torn and his hands were trembling. He had come to fix a communication tower, but now he was a prisoner of the alien race known as the Varnax. Their armor glowed with cold light, their eyes sharp and inhuman. Ethan didn't understand their language, but he could feel their anger. After a long walk, the aliens stopped before a massive structure made of silver stone. The building rose like a temple, surrounded by tall energy pillars that hummed softly. Inside, the air was cooler and filled with a strange scent, something like lightning and flowers. The soldiers pushed Ethan forward until he stood in front of a throne carved from crystal. On it sat a woman, or something close to one. Her skin was smooth and blue, her long hair pale like starlight. Golden eyes watched him calmly. Her armor shone brighter than the others, decorated with sharp lines and ancient symbols. This was Queen Zira, ruler of the Varnax Empire. Ethan swallowed hard. He had seen many things working with machines, but never anything like her. She didn't speak at first. Her gaze was steady, cold but curious. Then she spoke in perfect English and soft, almost like a whisper. "A human," she said. "Far from home and yet not afraid?" Ethan didn't know how to answer. His voice barely came out. I was repairing a tower. I didn't mean to cross your border." The Queen tilted her head slightly, studying him. "And yet you did." She stood up, her armor moving smoothly, the metal making a low hum. "Your people build machines, so do mine. Perhaps you can be useful before I decide what to do with you." A guard handed Ethan a set of alien tools and pointed to the Queen's chest armor, where a long crack glowed faintly. "Repair it," the Queen said simply. Her tone was calm, but her presence filled the room like pressure. Ethan nodded quickly, stepping forward. His hands shook as he examined the armor. The design was far beyond human technology, layers of living metal that pulsed with energy. He didn't even know where to begin, but he had to try. As he worked, he could feel her watching him. The silence made every movement louder, the sound of his breath, the light clink of tools, the faint hum of her armor. He focused on the damage, tracing the crack with a scanner. The metal responded strangely, shifting like it was alive. "This isn't normal metal," he muttered to himself. "No," the Queen replied softly. "It is bound to the blood of my kind. Only a Varnax can command it." Ethan hesitated. He reached carefully toward a glowing strand inside the armor. The moment his fingertips brushed it, the armor flared with blue light, bright, alive, and pulsing with energy. The glow spread across the surface like veins of light. Ethan stumbled back, shocked. The Queen's eyes widened slightly, her expression unreadable. One of the guards started, but the Queen lifted her hand. Silence filled the hall. She took a slow step toward Ethan. The blue light reflected in her eyes, soft and almost warm. She stopped close enough that he could feel the faint heat from her armor. Her voice dropped low, almost like a whisper, meant only for him. "Why so shy, human?" Ethan froze. His mind raced. The armor was reacting to him, something impossible. It shouldn't respond to human touch, not unless there was something different about him. He looked down at his hands, then at her. "I don't understand," he said quietly. The Queen studied him for a long moment. Her gaze softened and something like a smile touched her lips, small, mysterious. "You shouldn't be able to do that," she said. "Only my bloodline can wake the armor." "I swear I don't know how," Ethan said quickly. "I just touched it and it obeyed you," she interrupted, her voice calm but heavy with meaning. She took another step closer, her golden eyes glowing faintly. "Strange." She looked down at the glowing armor, then back at him. "Perhaps you are not what you seem, human." The room grew quiet again. The guards looked uncertain, waiting for her command. But the Queen only turned slightly, her tone softer now. "Take him to the inner quarters. I will speak with him again." As the guards led Ethan away, he looked back. The Queen was still standing in the same place, her armor pulsing faintly with that same blue light, the same color as his own eyes when the light had touched him. In that moment, a strange thought crossed his mind. Maybe this meeting was not an accident. Maybe he was connected to her world in a way he didn't yet understand. The Queen watched him leave, her smile fading into a thoughtful expression. "You're not what you seem," she whispered to herself. The faint echo of her words followed Ethan down the long metallic hallway. He didn't know it yet, but that single touch had already changed both of their destinies. The armor had chosen him, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The night inside the alien palace was strange. The walls glowed softly with blue veins of light, and the air hummed as if the building itself was alive. Ethan sat on the edge of a metallic bed inside a quiet chamber. 2 Varnax guards stood outside the door, their faces hidden behind helmets. He was not chained, but he knew he wasn't free either. Every sound echoed: the distant steps of soldiers, the soft hum of the Queen's palace, and sometimes a whispering wind that seemed to carry voices through the halls. Ethan had been given food, glowing cubes that somehow tasted like bread, but he couldn't eat much. His mind was full of questions. Why had the Queen kept him alive? Why did her armor react to his touch? And what did she mean when she said, "You're not what you seem"? He looked down at his hands. They looked normal, rough, dirty, human. Yet he remembered the blue light that had burst from his fingertips. It wasn't a trick. It had felt warm, like it recognized him. Hours passed. The lights dimmed and the palace fell silent. Just when Ethan thought he could finally rest, the door opened with a soft hiss. 2 guards stepped aside. The Queen entered, her armor faintly glowing in the darkness. She moved with quiet grace, her silver cloak trailing behind her. "Can't sleep?" she asked, her voice low and calm. Ethan stood up quickly. "I didn't expect you to visit a prisoner," she finished for him. A small smile curved her lips. "You are not a prisoner, human." "Not yet." He wasn't sure if that was a joke or a warning. "Then why am I here?" She walked slowly around the room, her golden eyes studying him. "Because when you touched my armor, it obeyed you. No human has ever done that." She stopped near him, her gaze softening. "Tell me, Ethan of Earth, what are you?" "I'm just an engineer," he said quickly. "I fix machines. That's all." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Machines, yes. But my armor is not a machine. It is part of me, connected to my blood, my energy. You awakened it as if you shared my bloodline." Ethan shook his head. "That's impossible. I'm human." Queen Zira looked at him silently for a long moment. Then she stepped closer until he could see the faint glow in her eyes. "Impossible," she whispered, "is often another word for hidden truth." She turned away, her gaze drifting toward the glowing wall. "Long ago," she said softly, "the Varnax and the humans were not enemies. We were explorers. We traveled the stars together before your kind forgot us. Perhaps your ancestors carried something of ours. Something buried deep in your blood." Ethan frowned. "You're saying I'm part alien?" She smiled faintly. "Maybe not alien. Maybe something lost. And found again." The silence stretched. Ethan could hear his heart beating. The Queen's voice dropped even softer. "When I first saw you, I thought you were weak, fragile, but now I'm not so sure. The armor doesn't make mistakes." He hesitated, his curiosity fighting his fear. "Why does the armor matter so much to you?" Her expression changed slightly. Pride and pain mixed together. "It is more than armor. It is the legacy of my ancestors. Only the true heir of the Varnax bloodline can control it. If it reacts to someone else, it means destiny has shifted." She turned toward him, her tone sharp again. "And I need to know why." Ethan swallowed hard. "Then let me help. I can study it. Maybe I can find a reason." The Queen tilted her head, studying him again. "You offer to help your captor?" He shrugged slightly. "Maybe you're not my enemy. Maybe I just want to understand what's happening." For the first time, she looked amused. Brave words for a human in a palace full of soldiers. "Curiosity stronger than fear," Ethan replied quietly. The Queen's golden eyes lingered on him for a moment longer before she turned to leave. But just as she reached the door, the lights flickered, every crystal in the room glowing the same blue color as before. Both of them froze. "What's happening?" Ethan asked. The Queen slowly lifted her hand. The armor on her wrist shimmered with light, then dimmed again. "It's reacting to you," she said, her tone almost a whisper. "I didn't do anything," Ethan said quickly, stepping back. She looked at him, her expression unreadable. "You don't need to. It feels your presence." The air between them buzzed softly like a pulse shared between 2 hearts. The Queen's gaze softened again, something human in her eyes for the first time. Then, as suddenly as it began, the glow faded. The palace went silent once more. Queen Zira took a slow breath and turned toward the guards. "No one enters this chamber tonight," she ordered. Her voice was calm, but there was tension beneath it. The guards bowed and closed the door behind her. When she looked back at Ethan, her tone was quieter. "Rest, human. Tomorrow we test the truth." Ethan nodded slowly, still confused, still curious. As she walked away, her silver armor caught the light and shimmered faintly blue, the same shade that had appeared when he touched it. When she was gone, Ethan sat back on the bed, staring at his hands again. The glow he had seen earlier was gone, but he could still feel something under his skin. A quiet hum, a warmth that didn't belong to him somehow. Without meaning to, he had become part of something far greater. And as he closed his eyes, he couldn't help but wonder what the Queen truly wanted. Answers, power, or something else entirely. Outside, the alien palace whispered softly, almost like it was alive, almost like it was watching them both. The next morning arrived with the sound of low humming. The palace came alive. Glowing walls brightened and alien guards moved in silent patterns across the silver halls. Ethan had barely slept. His mind kept returning to the strange connection between him and the Queen's armor. Every time he closed his eyes, he could see that blue light flashing again, pulsing like a heartbeat. When the door opened, 2 guards entered. "The Queen summons you," one of them said in a deep metallic voice. Ethan stood up, nervous but curious. The guards led him through a series of long corridors, each one filled with glowing symbols and strange humming devices. The deeper they went, the colder the air became. Finally, they entered a vast chamber. It looked like a lab. Tables covered in silver instruments, holographic screens floating in the air, and a large crystal core pulsing in the center. Queen Zira stood beside it, her armor gleaming faintly. Beside her was another figure, tall, wearing dark red armor with sharp edges. His eyes were colder, his expression full of suspicion. "This is my advisor, General Kael," the Queen said. "He has served me since before your kind reached the stars." Kael looked at Ethan with clear dislike. "So this is the human who touched royal armor and lived," he said harshly. "I warned you, my queen, he is dangerous." Ethan took a small step back but kept his voice calm. "I didn't mean to touch it. I was only trying to fix it." Kyle's eyes narrowed. "Lies. No human could awaken the royal armor. Only those of Varnak's blood can." The Queen raised her hand. "Enough, Kyle. He is not to be harmed." Kyle bowed stiffly, but his glare never softened. Ethan could feel the tension in the room, sharp and heavy. Queen Zira turned back to Ethan. "We will test you," she said simply. "I need to understand what you are." He hesitated. "Test me? How?" "By the armor," she said, pointing toward the large crystal structure. "This chamber contains ancient technology from the first Varnak's kings. It can measure the energy inside living beings." She walked closer to him, her steps slow and steady. "If the armor truly reacts to you, it will show us the truth." Ethan nodded nervously. "All right. I'll do it." Kale muttered something under his breath, but the Queen ignored him. She motioned for Ethan to step into the center of the chamber. The floor beneath him glowed with faint patterns. He could feel the vibration under his boots. The Queen raised her hand and energy from her armor flowed into the crystal core. The room brightened, filling with soft blue light. "Now," she said, "touch it." Ethan reached out slowly, his hand shaking. The moment his fingers brushed the surface of the crystal, the light exploded outward, bright, alive, almost blinding. The symbols on the walls began to spin, glowing faster and faster. Kale shouted, "Stop! It's reacting too strongly." But the Queen didn't move. Her eyes widened as she watched the energy form patterns in the air, symbols of ancient Varnak's language circling around Ethan. She could read them. They said one thing, blood recognized. Ethan stumbled back, gasping. The crystal pulsed one last time, then went dark. The room fell silent again. What does it mean?" Ethan asked, his voice trembling. Queen Zira stared at him, her voice soft and filled with something between shock and awe. "It means," she said slowly, "that the armor knows you as one of us." Ethan blinked. "That's not possible. I'm human." Kale stepped forward angrily.
"He's lying, my queen. Maybe his kind has stolen our blood."
"We should destroy him before—" "Silence," the Queen commanded, her tone sharp as thunder. Kyle froze, his jaw tightening. She turned back to Ethan, her gaze full of thought. There is something inside you, she said. Something old. Something that belongs to my people. Ethan's heart pounded. Are you saying I'm part alien? Perhaps not part, she replied. But connected. Bound through time. She looked into his eyes. You carry the same energy that flows through the royal bloodline. Ethan stepped back, shaking his head. No, I was born on Earth. My parents are normal people. I'm just an engineer. The Queen's expression softened. And yet the armor chose you. Kale's voice cut through the silence. My Queen, you are being deceived. The human is dangerous. Let me end this before he corrupts the prophecy. Prophecy? Ethan repeated, confused. Queen Zira glanced at Kale sharply, then back at Ethan. That is not your concern. Kale stepped closer, his tone filled with venom. You don't understand, human. The prophecy says that when the royal armor glows for an outsider, it marks the beginning of our empire's fall. Ethan looked from one to the other. Fall? What does that mean? The Queen didn't answer immediately. Her face was calm, but her eyes flickered with doubt. It means, she said quietly, that your presence changes everything. Kyle clenched his fists. He cannot stay, my Queen. Zira turned to him sharply. He stays. I will learn the truth myself. Kale bowed slightly, but his voice was cold. As you command. But remember, when this ends in blood, it will be on your hands. When he left, the Queen looked back at Ethan, her voice quieter now. Do not fear him. He follows the old ways. Ethan took a deep breath. So what happens now? She looked at the crystal again, her reflection glowing faintly blue. Now, human, we find out why fate brought you here. As she walked toward the door, she paused and looked over her shoulder. Rest tonight. Tomorrow we go deeper into the archives. There may be answers hidden there. Ethan nodded slowly. And if we don't find them? She gave a small, mysterious smile. Then perhaps we create them. When she left, the chamber dimmed again. Ethan stood alone beside the silent crystal, still feeling the faint warmth of its light in his hands. Somewhere deep inside, he knew the truth, whatever he was. His life would never be the same again. And far away in the shadows of the palace, General Kale watched from a distance, his eyes burning with quiet hatred as he whispered to himself. Before the next sunrise, the human dies. Night fell once again over the silver palace of the Varnax Empire. The air was still and heavy, filled with the soft hum of alien machines and distant echoes of footsteps. Ethan sat alone in his chamber, staring at the glowing marks on his hands. They had appeared after the crystal test, faint blue lines that pulsed like veins of light under his skin. He tried washing them off, but they always came back. He couldn't stop thinking about what the Queen had said. The armor knows you as one of us. The words kept repeating in his mind. Could it really be true? Could some part of him carry alien blood? It didn't make sense. Yet deep down he could feel something inside him, a strange warmth that wasn't there before. Suddenly the door to his room opened. He stood quickly, expecting the guards. But it was her. Queen Zira entered quietly, her silver armor reflecting the soft blue light. She looked different tonight. No crown, no guards, no command in her tone. Just calm. I thought you'd be asleep, Ethan said softly. Her lips curved slightly. Varnax queens do not sleep much. We dream with our eyes open. She walked closer, her golden eyes glowing faintly. You're still afraid. Ethan hesitated. I'm confused, not afraid. Everything that's happening. It's too much, she nodded slowly. I understand. But you must learn to control the bond. The energy that connects you to my armor, and it's growing stronger. Ethan frowned. Bond? You mean that energy pulse thing? Yes, she replied. It links us. When you touched my armor, you formed a bridge between human and Varnax energy. That bridge is alive now. Alive? He echoed. So, it's not just technology? Her voice softened. The armor is more than metal. It's made from the living essence of my ancestors. It responds to emotion, fear, pain, desire. Ethan felt his heart race a little at the last word, and she seemed to notice. A small, amused smile appeared on her lips. You see? She whispered. Even now it feels you. Before Ethan could reply, a loud crash echoed through the corridor. Both turned toward the sound. The lights flickered red in an alarm. The Queen's expression hardened instantly. Stay behind me, she ordered, her voice sharp again. The door burst open. 2 Varnax guards rushed in, weapons ready. My Queen, the lower gates are breached. The rebels are inside. Rebels? Ethan repeated. Queen Zira's tone was cold. Kale, she said, her voice steady but full of anger. He moved sooner than I thought. The guards fell back as explosions shook the palace. Shouts echoed through the halls, the sound of metal clashing against metal. Ethan could see firelight flickering from the distance. We have to move, Zira said, gripping her spear-like weapon. She turned to Ethan. Stay close, no matter what happens. They ran through the corridors followed by loyal guards. The palace that once felt calm now roared with chaos. Ethan's heart pounded as blaster fire flashed across the halls. He had never seen a real battle, and now he was in the middle of one. At the next corner, a group of enemy soldiers appeared. The Queen's armor flared with bright blue energy as she raised her hand. A wave of force exploded outward, throwing the attackers back like leaves in a storm. Ethan stared in awe. How did you— No time, she said quickly. This way. They turned another corner and suddenly more rebels appeared. One of them aimed a weapon directly at the Queen. Without thinking, Ethan grabbed her arm and pulled her aside. The shot missed her and hit the wall behind them. But before Ethan could move again, a second blast struck him in the side. He fell hard to the floor. Ethan! The Queen shouted, kneeling beside him. Her soldiers fought off the attackers as she pressed her hand over his wound. Her armor glowed, energy flowing from her palm into his body. Ethan gasped as warmth spread through him, pushing away the pain. Her voice trembled slightly. Why did you protect me, human? He looked up weakly, managing a faint smile. Because you looked afraid. Her golden eyes softened. For a moment, she wasn't a queen, just a woman watching someone risk his life for her. Foolish human, she whispered, but there was emotion in her voice. The blue light under her hand grew brighter, surrounding them both. The wound on Ethan's side slowly closed, leaving only a faint mark. He blinked, surprised. You healed me? Our energy is connected now, she said quietly. Your pain becomes mine. I cannot let you die. Before they could speak further, another explosion rocked the corridor. A guard shouted, The rebels are retreating for now, my queen. Zira stood, helping Ethan to his feet. Kale won't stop, she said. He believes killing you will end the prophecy. Ethan steadied himself. Then we need to find out what that prophecy really means. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Yes, but not tonight. As they made their way back to the inner chamber, Ethan noticed the blue glow on both their hands. The same light, pulsing in perfect rhythm. When they finally stopped to rest, the Queen turned to him and said softly, You shouldn't have protected me. Ethan gave a tired smile. Guess it's too late to change that. For the first time, Queen Zira laughed, quiet, genuine, almost human. But behind that moment of calm, the palace still burned. In the shadows far below, General Kale watched the flames rise and whispered, Let the Queen protect her pet human. Soon, they both will fall. Above, under the pale alien moon, the Queen looked out over her wounded kingdom. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't sure which frightened her more, losing her throne, or losing the human who had touched her armor and her heart. The palace was quiet again, but the silence was heavy, like the calm after a storm. The smell of burnt metal still lingered in the air, and the once bright halls were now dimmed with smoke. Repair drones floated through the corridors, fixing the damage left behind by Kale's rebellion. Ethan stood on the balcony of his chamber, looking out over the alien city below. From up here, he could see the twin moons reflecting off the silver rooftops. It looked peaceful, but he knew the truth. Danger still hid beneath that calm. Somewhere out there, Kyle was waiting. His side still ached faintly from the wound he'd taken, even though the Queen's energy had healed him. He could still feel it, a strange warmth inside his chest, like a heartbeat that wasn't his. Sometimes when he closed his eyes, he could even sense her presence, calm, powerful, but distant. The door slid open behind him. You should rest more, came her voice. Ethan turned. Queen Zira stood in the doorway. No guards, no crown, just her soft armor and a faint glow around her. She walked forward, her eyes meeting his. I can't rest when I know Kale is still out there, Ethan said quietly. He hides in the lower moons, Zira replied. My scouts are searching, but Kale is clever. He knows how to move unseen. Ethan frowned. He wants me dead because of the prophecy, right? Yes, she said, her tone softer. He fears what you represent. What do I represent exactly? Ethan asked. A threat? Zira paused. A possibility. She walked closer until she stood beside him. You awakened the royal armor. That means you share a connection to my bloodline. The prophecy says that when the armor glows for an outsider, it marks the rebirth of an ancient power and the fall of an old empire. Ethan turned toward her. And you think that power is me? Her eyes glimmered gold in the moonlight. I don't know, but I feel the bond between us growing. Every day it gets stronger. Ethan looked down at his hands. Faint blue light pulsed beneath his skin again. You mean this? She nodded. When you are near me, the armor reacts. When you were hurt, I felt pain too. Our energies are crossing. It is forbidden. Forbidden? Ethan echoed. Why? Because the royal bond can only exist between two of the same bloodline, she said. Between a queen and her chosen heir. Never with a human. Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke. Ethan could see conflict in her expression, strength and vulnerability mixed together. So what happens if the bond keeps growing? He asked carefully. She looked away for a moment, then whispered, It will unite us completely. One life shared, one heartbeat. If one dies, the other follows. Ethan froze. You mean, if I die, you die too? She met his eyes again, her expression calm but sad. Yes. Silence filled the room. The soft wind brushed against them, carrying faint sounds of alien music from somewhere below. Ethan finally said, Then Kale's attack wasn't just about me. If I died that night, it would have killed you too. The queen nodded slightly. He doesn't know that yet, and he must never find out. Ethan looked at her seriously. Then you need to break the bond. Her eyes softened. I tried. She raised her hand and removed a part of her armor, the chest plate that once glowed when he touched it. Underneath, faint scars ran across her blue skin, lines that looked almost human. The bond is not something that can be cut. It is alive. Ethan stared quietly. You have scars. She smiled faintly. You sound surprised. Even queens bleed. He looked away, unsure what to say. I didn't mean, I know, she interrupted gently. But there's more you should understand. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. These scars are old. Older than this empire. My ancestors carried traces of human blood, long ago before history divided our races. Ethan's eyes widened. So maybe that's why your armor reacted to me. Perhaps, she said softly. Or perhaps fate chose its own path. They stood close now, the blue light from her armor casting a soft glow over both of them. Ethan could feel the air between them hum faintly, the same energy he'd felt when he touched her armor the first time. Tell me something, he said quietly. Do you regret saving me? Her eyes met his, steady but full of emotion. No, but I fear what it will cost. What if we can use this bond for something good? Ethan said. Maybe it doesn't have to be a curse. Zira looked at him, her golden eyes shimmering. You speak like a dreamer. Maybe, Ethan replied, smiling faintly. But dreams built your empire once, didn't they? For a moment, the queen said nothing. Then she smiled, a small, honest smile. You are strange, human. So I've been told, he said softly. They both turned toward the balcony, watching the moons rise higher. But the peace didn't last long. A messenger drone flew through the window, stopping in front of the queen. It projected a red symbol of the mark of rebellion. Her expression hardened. Cal has moved again. He attacks the southern outpost at dawn. Ethan clenched his fists. Then we'll stop him. She turned to him quickly. No, you will stay here. The bond makes you my weakness. If he captures you, he can destroy me. I'm not hiding while people fight because of me, Ethan said firmly. Her gaze softened. You are brave, Ethan of Earth. But bravery and foolishness are often the same thing. She turned and began to walk away, then paused at the door. Without looking back, she said quietly, Rest tonight. Tomorrow war begins again. Ethan watched her go, his heart heavy with question and something more. He didn't understand this bond, but he could feel it tightening, pulling them closer with every heartbeat. And far beneath the palace, hidden among the shadows, Kale watched through stolen sensors. His voice was low, filled with hate. The queen protects him still, he muttered. But soon I'll break their bond and watch them both burn. The two moons shone bright above the alien city, marking the beginning of another long night. The queen stood alone in her chamber staring at the stars, whispering to herself, "What are you, human? And why does my heart fear losing you?" The next morning came too soon. The first rays of the alien suns broke through the silver mist that hung over the Varnak's capital. The city was already awake, soldiers preparing weapons, drones loading supplies, the hum of engines filling the air. War was coming again. Ethan watched from the balcony as Queen Zyra's fleet prepared for departure. Giant airships floated above the palace, their hulls glowing with blue energy. The sound of marching echoed in the distance. The Queen's army was ready. He wanted to help, but her words from last night still echoed in his mind. "You will stay here." Ethan clenched his fists. He hated being useless. He wasn't a warrior, but he wasn't going to sit by while others fought for him. The door opened suddenly. General Varric, one of Zira's commanders, stepped inside. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and his armor shimmered like dark glass. "You shouldn't be here, human," he said in a cold tone. "I'm not going to hide," Ethan replied. "I can help repair the weapons, the shields, anything." Varric stared at him for a moment, then said, "You are the Queen's bond. That makes you her greatest risk. If you die, she dies." Ethan sighed. "I know, but I can't do nothing." Before Varric could respond, the entire room shook. The floor trembled, and the sky outside exploded in flashes of red light. The alarms began to scream through the palace. "Enemy strike," a voice shouted through the comms. "Kale's ships are here." Ethan ran to the window. In the sky, dark ships appeared from behind the clouds, firing streams of plasma toward the palace. The shields shimmered but began to crack under the assault. Varric grabbed his communicator. "Protect the Queen," he shouted before sprinting out. Ethan didn't think twice. He ran down the corridor toward the command deck. The halls were chaos. Guards shouting, debris falling, the smell of burning metal in the air. When he reached the deck, he saw Queen Zyra standing before the central console, her armor glowing fiercely. Her voice was calm as she issued orders. "Divert power to the lower shields. Target their engines, not their guns." A guard turned to her. "Your Majesty, the southern wall is breached." "I will handle it," she said. Ethan rushed forward. "You can't go out there alone." She turned toward him, surprised. "Ethan!" "I told you to stay back." "Too late," he said, breathing hard. "I'm not letting you fight alone." For a second, her golden eyes softened, then hardened again. "Then stay close to me," she said quietly. They ran through the burning corridors toward the southern gates. When they arrived, chaos waited for them. Kale's soldiers, tall, armored rebels, were breaking through the main door. The sound of metal and energy clashing filled the air. Zyra raised her hand, and a pulse of blue light burst from her armor, throwing several attackers back. Ethan stood behind her, watching in awe. She moved like flowing fire, every strike powerful and graceful. But Kale's forces were relentless. They pushed forward again, firing energy bolts that tore through the walls. One blast hit near Ethan, throwing him backward. "Ethan!" Zyra shouted, turning toward him. Her armor flared with light, too much light. The bond between them was reacting again. When she felt his pain, her own body weakened. She stumbled slightly, pressing a hand to her chest. The connection between them glowed visibly now, a faint line of blue energy linking their hearts. Kale stepped through the smoke. His armor was dark red, his eyes burning with hatred. "So it's true," he growled. "The Queen has bonded with a human." Zyra straightened, raising her sword. "Kale, stop this madness." "Madness?" Kale spat. "You've doomed us all. That thing beside you is not a savior, he's a disease." Ethan struggled to stand. "You're wrong. I didn't ask for this, but I'm not your enemy." Kyle laughed bitterly. "Not my enemy? You're the end of everything we are." He raised his weapon and fired directly at Ethan. Zyra moved instantly, faster than thought. She stepped in front of Ethan, her armor taking the full hit. The blast sent her crashing into the wall. "Zyra!" Ethan shouted, running to her side. Her armor flickered, and for a terrifying second she didn't move. Kale walked forward, raising his weapon again. "When she dies, so will you. The bond will end, and I'll save our empire." Ethan felt something inside him break. The bond, that strange pulse of energy, flared again, brighter than ever before. His veins glowed blue, and his eyes burned with light. Kale froze, startled. What are you?" Ethan's voice was low but filled with power. "I don't know. But you made a mistake hurting her." He raised his hand, and the same energy that powered Zyra's armor surged through him. It blasted outward in a wave of light, throwing Kale and his soldiers back like they were weightless. The walls shook and the ground cracked beneath them. When the light faded, Kyle was gone, retreating through the smoke, shouting orders to fall back. Ethan fell to his knees, panting. The glow around him slowly faded. He looked down at Zyra, who was breathing weakly. "You're okay," he whispered, his voice shaking. Her eyes opened slowly. "You saved me," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "Guess we're even now." She reached up, touching his face gently. "Ethan, your power." "It's growing," he nodded, confused but calm. "I felt it too. Like your energy became mine." The Queen closed her eyes for a moment, whispering, "The bond has changed us both." As the alarms finally went silent and the sky outside cleared, Ethan looked out over the battlefield. The city still stood, but nothing was the same. The Queen rested her hand on his chest. "Kyle will return," she said softly. "Next time he will not run." Ethan looked at her, determination in his eyes. "Then next time we'll be ready." High above them, the twin moons glowed brighter than ever, as if watching the bond that now united two souls from different worlds. But far beyond the city, in the shadows of the outer moon, Kale stood among his remaining soldiers, his face twisted in anger. "The human has become one of us," he hissed. "Then we'll tear the stars apart to destroy him." The war was far from over. It had just begun. The sky above the Varnak's capital burned with 1,000 lights. Warships circled like dark birds, and the sound of distant explosions never stopped. The palace that had once felt safe now stood under siege. Soldiers moved like shadows through the halls. Orders shouted and answered in quick, sharp voices. Ethan and Queen Zyra prepared beside the war command, their faces set and tired, but their eyes steady. Zyra's advisors gathered around the map table. "Kale marches on the inner keep," Varric reported. "He has brought new weapons, ones that can pierce our shields." Zyra touched the glowing map, her fingers leaving faint blue trails. "Hold the outer gates," she ordered. "I will meet him in the throne hall." Her voice was calm, but the men and women around her felt the weight behind it. Ethan looked at her. "You don't have to face him alone," she offered a small, tired smile. "You stood with me before. Stay close." They moved with a small group of loyal guards. The corridors were lined with wounded soldiers and broken statues. Sparks flew from exposed conduits, and the air tasted of smoke. As they passed, soldiers bowed or reached out to touch Ethan's sleeve, some in fear, some in hope. He felt the burden of their trust, heavy and real. The inner keep gates shuddered as Kale's forces hit them. The rebels poured through like a dark river. Ethan and Zyra fought their way forward side by side. Zyra moved like a storm, precise and terrible, her armor throwing off waves of energy that flattened attackers. Ethan stayed near her, repairing damaged shields, clearing debris, and sometimes throwing himself into the line of fire to protect a fallen guard. He was still not a soldier, but he had a new power now, and he used it without thinking. They reached the throne hall where Kyle waited, flanked by his red-armored commanders. The throne room was a vast space of silver and glass. The great throne sat empty beneath a broken banner. Kale stepped forward, his face twisted with rage. "Zyra," he spat, "you have betrayed our people." "You have betrayed them," she replied. "You turned soldiers to killers for your thirst for power." Kyle laughed, cruel and low. "Words will not save you. The bond with the human will end tonight." He raised his weapon and his soldiers advanced. The two sides clashed like thunder. Light flashed, metal screamed, and men and aliens fell. Ethan fought fiercely, but his mind kept returning to the link between him and the Queen. When she moved, he felt it in his bones. When she was struck, pain stabbed through him like a hot blade. Their energy hummed, bright and dangerous. At the center of the battle, Kale fired a heavy pulse weapon directly at Zyra. The blast hit her armor. For a moment, nothing happened, and then her armor flickered. The blue glow that had always surrounded her stuttered and died in spots. The pulse tore through her defenses and sent her stumbling back. "No!" Ethan cried, racing forward. He reached the Queen and saw the damage. Deep cracks across the breastplate, sparks leaking like small stars. Her strength faltered. Sweat and alien blood mixed on her skin. The bond screamed in his mind like a bell. If she fell, he would fall too. Ethan grabbed his tools, hands working faster than thought. He was an engineer, not a soldier, but now he had to be both. Around them, the battle roared. Sparks and fire lit the room. Soldiers fought over the broken pieces of armor as if each scrap could change the fight. "Secure her," Zira gasped. "Keep me alive!" A guard laid a heavy shield over her body as Ethan climbed onto the broken dais. He set to work under the rain of sparks and falling stone. Wires and living metal twisted in his fingers. He felt the Queen's breath nearby, shallow and quick. The bond hummed louder, urging him, pleading. Cale noticed and moved to cut them off. His blade came like a shadow. Ethan worked with one hand and held a repaired plate with the other, fighting to keep the armor together. A rebel soldier struck at his shoulder, but Ethan shoved him away and kept working. Time narrowed to the rhythm of his hands. He thought of Earth once, of quiet nights fixing small radios and engines. He had never imagined this, repairing a Queen's armor while death circled. His fingers found a fractured seam and pressed it closed. The living metal accepted his touch as if it remembered him. The blue light returned slowly, knitting the crack like a wound healing. Cale lunged, and for a terrifying second it felt as if his strike would end everything. Ethan braced, and the Queen, with a fight in her eyes, pushed him away with a surge of strength. She held Cale back for a split second. Enough. Ethan hammered the last link in place, and the armor sighed. Whole again. The connection flared, blinding and beautiful. When the light faded, both Ethan and Zira sagged, exhausted. Around them, Cale's forces paused, stunned by the sudden return of the Queen's power. It gave loyal soldiers the moment they needed. They pressed the advantage, forcing the rebels back step by step. Kyle, seeing his plan collapse, roared with fury and retreated into the smoke. The throne hall was a field of silence after the noise. Bodies and broken banners. The smell of burned oil heavy in the air. Zira leaned on her staff, breathing hard. Ethan sank to his knees, hands trembling from the work and the shock. Their eyes met, and in that look there was no ruler and no prisoner. Only two people who had almost lost each other. "You could have died," Zira said quietly. Her voice shook in a way she had never shown before. "I would die for this," Ethan replied simply. "For you? For them." She reached out and touched his cheek with a scarred finger. The bond pulsed softly in answer, like a heartbeat that belonged to both of them. Far away in the smoke and ash, Cale watched the palace from the shadows, his face a mask of hate that had not yet learned to lose. He whispered into the dark, "This war is not over." In the throne hall, soldiers began to tend the wounded. The Queen took the throne again, but she did so with a new weight on her shoulders. She and Ethan shared that weight like two halves of a whole. The palace had been saved for now, but both of them knew the truth. The bond held them together, and together they would have to face whatever came next. Days passed after the great battle, but the scars of war still marked every wall of the Varnak's palace. The once bright halls were quiet now, filled with echoes of repair drones and soft murmurs of wounded soldiers. The city outside tried to rebuild, but fear still lingered, the kind that doesn't fade when the smoke clears. Ethan stood in the Queen's garden, looking at the alien stars. The twin moons hung low, their light spilling over the silver leaves. It was peaceful, but inside him there was only restlessness. The bond between him and Queen Zira pulsed faintly, not painful but constant, like a reminder that his fate no longer belonged to him alone. He heard soft footsteps behind him. "You're awake early," Zira said gently. He turned. She was dressed in a simple robe, no armor, no crown. Without them, she looked almost human, calm, tired, but beautiful in a way he didn't have words for. "I couldn't sleep," Ethan admitted. "The city's quiet." "Too quiet." Zira walked beside him, her golden eyes watching the horizon. "It's the silence that comes before something ends or begins," she said softly. Ethan nodded. "Cale's still out there, isn't he?" "Yes," she said. "But this time he hides deeper. He has gone beyond the moons. My scouts cannot reach him." "Then it's only a matter of time before he comes back," Ethan said quietly. Zira looked at him for a long moment. "Perhaps, but the next war may not be fought with ships or soldiers." He frowned. "What do you mean?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she touched the faint blue scar that now ran across her wrist, the mark of their bond. "The Council fears you," she said finally. "They think you control me." Ethan blinked. "That's not true." "I know," she said. "But fear doesn't need truth. They've begun whispering that I am no longer fit to rule, that the bond has corrupted me." Ethan felt his stomach tighten. "So they want to replace you?" Zira nodded slowly. They want me to sever the bond or surrender the throne. He stepped closer. Can you break it? Her voice was barely above a whisper. Not without breaking us both. Silence hung between them. Ethan looked away, heart pounding. He didn't know what to say when every option hurt. He wanted her to live. He wanted her to rule. But he also knew the bond made her vulnerable. After a long pause, she said, "There is one way. A ritual. Ancient and dangerous. It can transfer the bond's power into one host, either you or me. But it demands a sacrifice, and what kind of sacrifice?" Ethan asked. "One life for another," she said quietly. "The bond's energy cannot vanish. It must choose." Ethan stared at her, realizing what she meant. "You'd die for me?" She smiled sadly. "Perhaps I already did the day I saved you." He shook his head. "No, we'll find another way." "Ethan," she said, her tone firm but kind, "this bond was never meant to exist. The longer it lives, the more unstable it becomes. One day it will destroy us both, and everything around us." He took her hand, feeling the warmth of her skin and the faint hum of power beneath it. "Then we face it together. That's what we've been doing since the beginning." Her eyes softened, filled with something between love and sorrow. "You don't understand, Ethan. If I die, you live. But if I live, the Empire dies." He stared at her, unable to speak. Before he could answer, a sound cut through the air, a deep rumble like thunder. The sky outside darkened suddenly and the palace trembled. Alarms blared again. Zira turned sharply. "Kyle," she said. "He's returned." They ran to the command deck. Outside the windows, massive rebel ships appeared through the clouds, descending fast. Red lightning lit the sky. Kale's final assault had begun. "Prepare all defenses," Zira commanded. "Get the civilians underground." Ethan stood beside her. "You can't do this alone." "I must," she said, her armor already forming around her body in flashes of blue light. "The ritual must happen during battle. The bond's energy will be strongest then." He grabbed her arm. "No, you'll die." She looked at him, really looked. And for the first time he saw fear in her eyes. "If I die, my people live. If I live, they burn. You said we'd face it together. So let me finish this for both of us." Before he could stop her, she stepped into the light and vanished, teleporting to the battlefield. The city shook as the Queen appeared in the sky, glowing like a star. Kale's fleet surrounded her, but she didn't flinch. She raised her hands, and the bond between her and Ethan pulsed so bright it hurt. Ethan collapsed, feeling her pain through it, but he also felt her power. "Ethan." Her voice echoed in his mind, soft but fading. "You gave me courage. Now give me your strength." He closed his eyes and whispered, "Take it all." A blinding wave of light erupted across the horizon. For a moment it looked like dawn had arrived early. The rebel fleet disintegrated in a single pulse of energy, blue and white and gold, and then silence. When the light faded, only the sky remained, empty, still, and quiet. Ethan woke up hours later, surrounded by soldiers. The city was safe, the sky clear, the war over. But the Queen was gone. Only her crown lay on the balcony, glowing faintly with the same blue light that once marked their bond. He picked it up, his chest aching with a mix of grief and peace. "You kept your promise," he whispered. The light from the crown pulsed once, soft, almost like a heartbeat, then faded. Years later, songs would be sung about the human and the alien queen who shared one soul, one destiny. Some said she died. Others said she became the light in the skies of Varnax, watching over them forever. And every night when the twin moons rose, Ethan would look up and feel her presence still whispering in the wind. "Why so shy, human?" He would smile softly and answer, "Not anymore." And with that, the story of the Queen and the human ended, not with loss, but with a love that survived beyond worlds.